Welcome to the Why Factor, a chance to work out why we do what we do. BBC World Service podcasts are supported by advertising.
This week on the podcast Spark and Fire, comedian Cristela Alonso.
I couldn't get auditions. The voice teacher told me, well, as a Latina, you can do West Side Story and then you're done.
Cristela shares the story of being the first Latina to write, produce, and star in a primetime comedy. On Spark and Fire, creators share their stories to fuel your creativity. Spark and Fire is a Wait What original in partnership with the BBC. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
My generation, the much-discussed millennials, talk about starting our own businesses all the time. It's something I'd like to explore with you on this edition of The Y Factor on the BBC World Service. I'm Nastra Antavakoli-Far, and I'm exploring why millennials are so attracted to starting and running their own businesses.
We've been doing the Millennial Survey for the past 8 years.
That's Christine Self from the professional services consultancy Deloitte. That survey she mentioned samples the opinions of people aged under 36 every year right across the world. It includes 13,000 millennials from 42 countries, including most of Western Europe and North America, and also Brazil, Chile, Russia, China, Turkey, Indonesia, and Nigeria. From this year's World Economic Forum at Davos, she told me about the findings of the latest survey.
They're not particularly satisfied with their lives, their financial situations, their jobs, government and business leaders, social media, and the way that their data is being used. We also found that they value experiences over kind of traditional adult markers. They also prefer to have more of a positive impact on society than to start a family.
Nobody sits in the back row. Okay, we've got some good news for me.
In the town of Wrexham in North Wales, a week-long course is being run by the Pop-Up Business School, who teach people about how to start their own businesses without the need for a big loan or a business plan. One of the students is Peter, who's 33 and Polish.
I'm running a little craft business called Mr. Hangeman Crafts. It's crafts out of pallets, recycled materials and reclaimed wood. My main reason to start in this company was my spine surgery, which I had in 2013. It made me realize there's more in life than actually just working for somebody else, and be creative and be inspired by art and environment could be enough to go after your dreams. I could inspire people to be more environment friendly. Instead of buying things from IKEA, we could buy something which will last longer because it's real wood and it's eco-friendly. So we make a little impact, but altogether we make a huge difference in the environment.
The person who's running today's event for Pop-Up Business School is 28-year-old Amy Howe, who has similar motivations to Peter. She left a safe and stable job in housing.
The reason I took the leap and worked for Pop-Up was because I really felt like I wanted to have that direct impact with people day to day and actually see the effects of the stuff that we're teaching and actually see those people grow. And it's probably the most rewarding part of my job is to be on events and see people come in on a Monday morning, and the difference in the person and their business when they leave on a Friday is just like so incredible to see.
Now, what Amy is describing is something I've seen amongst my peers. Among my much talked about millennial generation, people who are currently aged between 24 and 38, there seems to be a great interest in wanting to become an entrepreneur. We see it in the growth of co-working spaces in cities across the world, filled with millennials on their laptops starting their own thing. A lot of this buzz is related to the growth of tech, and in particular, the big companies who've come out of California's Silicon Valley, which has given rise to success stories with millennial founders, such as Airbnb, Snapchat, and Facebook.
The estimate is since the late 1990s, the cost of launching a web-based startup has dropped by about 3 orders of magnitude, so 1,000 times less expensive. So that makes it very easy to experiment.
This is Professor Ethan Mollick, an associate professor in innovation and entrepreneurship at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania in the US.
There's all these platforms that let you build entrepreneurial ventures much more easily. The growth of things like crowdfunding have helped make entrepreneurship more accessible and led to tons of new startups. So there's a lot of new methods for launching businesses, and the cost of launching a new business has dropped at the same time.
Why is there so much buzz around becoming an entrepreneur in this generation?
So I think entrepreneurship, especially in a sort of social media era, has become an acceptable and exciting thing to do. So we see the successes and it becomes something you emulate. Entrepreneurs have become, I think, the last group that everybody generally on all sides of the political divide lionize as being useful and good, at least up to a point. So I think it becomes a goal for people. And I think that in a world where steady work, especially after the 2008 recession, felt less steady than it did before, lots of fabled companies collapsed, people feel like they might need to be on their own to make this happen. So I think that plus the sort of mega payouts that now happen to some founders have helped make this very attractive. And it gets added to by the fact that, entrepreneurs are treated like rock stars in some situations. There's television shows about them. And I think that has helped make this a cooler profession.
Do you know what? I'm going to go with my gut on this. And my gut says, go with you, Peter.
Are you accepting my offer?
100%.
Wow.
Well done.
And at the same time, there's real reasons people might want to become founders. So in my survey work of Wharton MBA alumni, who admittedly are not representative of the entire universe, the entrepreneurs among them were the happiest of any profession on average, and most satisfied with their jobs, most satisfied with their careers, and most satisfied with their work-family life.
And these non-financial motivations are also influencing what we expect from businesses in the first place. Here's Deloitte's Christine Self again.
One thing that has been discussed a lot at Davos this year is the fact that there seems to be more agreement and more discussion now that business really has an important role to play beyond just an obligation, beyond just shareholders and making money. And people are starting to talk about a move to shareholder capitalism in which business is responsible to a wider group of stakeholders, such as employees, society in general, etc. Millennials, I believe, have been driving a lot of this discussion.
Which takes us to the worlds of entrepreneurship and also to social enterprise. So here it's not just about making money doing something you love, but about giving back and changing the world, and doing so in a new and innovative way. Social entrepreneurship received a big boost in 2006 after Microsoft founder Bill Gates announced he'd be focusing on social impact.
I call upon the Nobel Peace Prize laureate for 2006, Muhammad Yunus, to come forward to receive the gold medal and the diploma.
And after the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Muhammad Yunus, who pioneered microfinance for people on low incomes.
I think entrepreneurship was a way to following my passion.
This is Zubaida Bai, the founder and CEO of Eyes, a social enterprise which makes and sells healthcare products for women and girls. She's 39 and is from Chennai in India, which is where the company started. Zubaida Bai has had her work recognized by the UN. She's been named a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum. And she's given a popular TED Talk, which has had over 38,000 views.
In the next 6 minutes that you will listen to me, the world will have lost 3 mothers while delivering their babies.
She told me about Isa's first product.
So the product basically is a kit that has 6 surgical supplies that are essential for infection reduction during childbirth. And these supplies basically are what are recommended by the World Health Organization for infection prevention. The product contains a blood-absorbing sheet for a woman to be delivering the baby on, a surgical scalpel to cut the umbilical cord, a pair of gloves, a bar of soap, and the first cloth to wipe the baby clean. All this comes in a beautiful pink purse, and this sold as a product for $3. And we've sold this in about 13 countries, and we are at about 500,000 products in the market.
The World Health Organization estimates that infections lead to over a third of neonatal deaths. Zubaida told me about the idea behind the product.
I really wanted to set up a company that took low-cost, simple, frugal technologies to market, which had impact on women. I met with a midwife who I struck a conversation with, and she basically explained to me how she used an agricultural tool to conduct childbirth in her house. And that basically sparked the aha moment in me wanting to figure out what was wrong, because I personally had an infection during childbirth, and that was because my gynecologist forgot to put me on antibiotics. And so I could relate to the pain of infection that a woman would go through, and I think I spent about 2 years researching into the subject area and talking to various experts. And I also did a fellowship in maternal health through Ashoka and the Gates Foundation. So I developed the product and then launched the product commercially in 2012. They were using razor blades that men would use for shaving. There was absolutely no gloves being used. Old rags were being used to wipe the baby as soon as the baby was born. And the kit basically helps bring structure with the right tools in the right place at the right time and also at the right price point.
So Zubaida, I'm wondering, why did you want to create a business that would deal with this problem rather than, for example, working with local hospitals or with an NGO or trying to push for government to provide some of these spaces and equipment?
I think our first reaction to the problem was that there must be a product that already exists in the market, and all we want to do is buy that product and sell it or be a distributor for that product. What we realized was most of these interventions were based on or were run by nonprofit organizations, so it was totally dependent on the funding that the organization received and the mandate. And even when the funding was received and when the product was donated, it was not necessarily of the right quality that went to the woman. So what we thought was, and at that point we wanted to validate this by bringing a market-based solution, is because we knew these women exactly knew what they want and why they wanted it. And if we gave them a product that they could afford and they understood the need for, they would definitely invest in the health of their future and their well-being.
I think ultimately, when it comes to entrepreneurship, you try to solve the problems that you deal with.
This is Richard D. Caldecalos from the Philippines. He's an entrepreneur and a coach, and he used to work in a public university. He developed a board game called Upstart, which simulates the challenges when starting a business as a way to give low-income students a taste of what it's like to become an entrepreneur. He works closely with millennials and told me more about their motivations.
The thing about the Philippines being a post-colonial country, there's a lot of problems to deal with. And most of the people I've known, coached, and trained, especially within Southeast Asia, are looking to solve problems that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And I think the resources to do that are very, very apparent now and accessible.
And why are these people trying to solve these problems through entrepreneurship rather than getting involved in government or in NGOs or other institutions which we might more traditionally think the route to change or social change?
I think with traditional institutions like government, there's a lot of bureaucracy. And in a post-colonial country like the Philippines, there is also the challenge of corruption. So things don't necessarily move fast. And when you want to solve a problem, you want to be able to iterate change. And institutions aren't built for change.
He told me about some compelling examples from the Philippines.
I worked with a venture capital firm, and one of our investments was a startup called My Kuya.
The founder of this startup wanted to give Filipinos in the gig economy access to jobs and training.
He would do this by connecting larger corporations with people who were in the informal labor sector, but might not necessarily have the training. So they also have training components. His name's Ryan. I mentored him a very long time ago, and he has a startup called Virtualahan. What he essentially does is he works with, I would say, disabled communities and other marginalized communities when it comes to the workforce, and he trains them to become virtual assistants and virtual workers, because usually traditional offices may not have the setup to, let's say, for example, have someone with a wheelchair. And that was something that he did because he had a passion around that area and he saw a problem.
Traffic is also a big problem in the capital city, Manila. It makes deliveries very difficult work. So the app Jojo tries to solve this problem by allowing people who own motorbikes to get paid to make deliveries.
What they do is help turn everyday people into couriers. That way, packages and business parcels can get delivered as fast as possible. Because traditionally, a large van wouldn't be able to move around in a motorcycle. And you'll see a lot of examples of that in Southeast Asia.
One person who's skeptical of this aspiration to develop change-the-world entrepreneurship is Charles Kenny. He's a former World Bank economist who is now a senior fellow at the Center for Global Development. He says that most of the big changes that have happened in developing countries haven't come from social entrepreneurs, but rather from governments. What's more, social enterprises may be well-intentioned, but they often have limited reach and may not even provide good solutions to problems in the first place.
Very well-intentioned, trying to deal with a real problem was the socket, which was a football that you could play with on the street and kick around. It had inside it a little generator that as you were kicking it around, it produced electricity that was stored in a battery, and then you could plug in a lamp. As it turned out, it wasn't actually a very comfortable soccer ball to use. It broke a lot, and it took rather a lot of playing soccer to produce not very much light. It got attention from no less than President Obama, who, when he was in Africa talking about Power Africa, that was actually an attempt to get reliable grid power to more Africans, a really important development priority. He took time out to play with the socket. And for all the potential value of a single LED light bulb to a family, that's not a transformative level of electricity for development. And I think him taking time away from talking about boring stuff like power plants to play with the socket is a kind of sign of how this can go wrong.
And I mean, is that a bigger concern, that if social entrepreneurship is so sort of glamorized, that smart people will go into that rather than where they're truly needed?
I do worry that there is some sort of excess focus on what it is the individual entrepreneur can achieve at the cost of thinking about what can we as a collective, as a community, achieve when we work together.
So despite all this, why do many millennials still focus on becoming social entrepreneurs?
So if you want to make an immediate difference, entrepreneurship is very attractive, right? If you've got a good idea, you can go out there, you can try and change the world. I think also it reflects some skepticism, maybe mistrust of other approaches to making the world a better place. So, for example, working in government, a lot of people feel that government isn't delivering.
And an old-style corporate life doesn't appeal either.
And they're skeptical of large private companies. And I think also it reflects a recent experience of some fantastically successful entrepreneurs. I mean, if you look at the richest people in the world, many of them started their own firms. So, the Bill Gateses, Facebook, Amazon, so on and so forth.
But what about people who are millennials in countries where corruption is really a big deal, or there's a lot of nepotism, or it's actually pretty difficult to get something done within government?
If you are working in a place with a corrupt and inefficient government, one of the best ways you can push development in your country is to try and make that problem a little bit better. It's not something that any one individual can do. It has to be a collective effort. But the more we have young, committed, smart people who want to make the world a better place working in government, the more likely government is to start delivering the kind of services we need in order to ensure a high quality of life in that country. So the chance of making an impact that is truly transformative is also bigger, because governments are so much bigger than your average social entrepreneur.
For a sense of scale, let's look at Amazon founder and CEO Jeff Bezos, who is the richest person on Earth. His estimated wealth still only amounts to around 9 to 10 days of US government spending. Back at Wrexham, I met some more people who want to use business to do good.
I'm Isabella Crowther and I am 24. I am a music tutor. I run my own private music tutoring business and have employees under that business. I started it because there were other tutors in the area who were not safe, really. I had bad experiences with other music tutors in the past when I was learning as a young woman. And I was like, right, I've had enough of this. This is not okay. And I went away and studied whilst down in London. So I did my degree in music, popular music, came back and realised that people who I had bad experiences with were still practising tutors in the area. And I was like, right, I'm not going to have any of this, so I'll start my own company and make sure that at least the young people that I tutor are safe and well looked after. So yes, and that's why I do it.
Okay, so recap on what we did yesterday really quickly. So we did signals, which look like...
My name is Tom, or Thomas Hughes Lloyd, and I'm looking to start a local hip-hop dance company that gives confidence to young people.
One on your right, you're going to go right, left, right, left, right.
I love the community that I'm in here, so I want to try and give back to the young people and provide hip-hop dance lessons.
According to Zubaida Bai, this is the same aspiration that motivates millennial entrepreneurs halfway around the world in India. What is the main motivation for millennials in India to become entrepreneurs?
To be able to think beyond the existing bureaucracy and to be able to contribute back to the country. I think a lot of Indian youth really want to contribute.
And even if there's debate about whether entrepreneurship is an effective way to change the world, most millennials would still rather give it a shot than to not try at all. Here's Ethan Mollick of the Wharton School of Business again.
People who are founders especially tend to have what's called a high internal locus of control. They want to be in control of their own destiny, their own fate. And that's hard to do in large companies. And it's hard to do the missions that you think are important for the world. And there's this reputation of millennials for being mission-driven and caring about what outcomes from their work are. And if you care about that, then entrepreneurship is one path to do that.
This episode of The Y Factor was presented and produced by me. I'm Nasran Tavakoli Far. Our editor is Andrew Smith, and our sound engineer was Neil Churchill.
Hello, I'm Robin Ince.
I'm Brian Cox.
There's a new series of The Infinite Monkey Cage, and we are dealing with things like the history of astronomy and the changing ideas of the night sky.
Spiders.
Well, spiders. You did not like spiders, did you? We're also going to be looking at the nature of the material your face is made of, which, of course, is not known anywhere else on the planet Earth. It is totally inhuman. And we're going to be telling you how to commit the perfect murder.
The Infinite Monkey Cage.
Listen wherever you get your BBC podcasts. My wife is a big fan of yours, by the way.